Real estate rewired.
I try not to make that mistake twice. But anyway, let me give you a little context to what's going on, and then let's have some fun.
Okay.
Short version, I was a managing broker for 20 years in New York City, had a team of 100 agents, primarily did corporate relocation. So it was a sweet gig. You know, companies were paying. They were in a hotel for 30 days. They had to find their permanent housing. Heard, quote unquote, 4 years ago, you can only play so much pickleball. So, you know, back in the day, I was an actor, stand-up comedian, always wanted to have a talk show. Got obsessed with AI about 4 years ago and then said, you know what, man, I'm going to do a podcast. I'm going to interview 100 people in the real estate space, both service providers in AI, brokers, top of the bottom, and basically just get an understanding of like where people are in their adoption, their attitudes towards it. And I'm about 82 podcasts in. And so basically what happens is we have a conversation about like where you're at, what's going on, what you're using, what you're not using. I never know where these things are going to go. I mean, the last podcast, we ended up talking sports for about 25 minutes because, you know, that's just where it went. So I'll stop there. Did you have any questions for me?
I guess, is this specifically about AI use, or what direction are you wanting it to go?
Sure. So tell me a little bit about you, Tyler, just in terms of like what business you're in, what you're doing right now, like where are you at? You know what I mean?
Yeah. So, I've been in I started as a real estate investor. I bought my first house when I was 18 years old. It was a fixer upper and I had no money, and I had $2,500 I saved up working part-time through high school, and had decent credit because I'd financed a vehicle at one point with a local bank. So I kind of was able to finagle it with a FHA loan. But the house needed a lot more work than I thought. And so I went to Home Depot and they gave me a zero interest credit card for a year, and bought all the materials I needed and figured out how to fix it all myself. Then I just that worked really well actually. So then I just kind of kept doing that over and over again. And by the time I was 20, I had 8 houses, and I had some people come to me and say, hey, you want to manage our apartment building? It was 40 units in, the small college town in Kansas that I started doing this in.
So you're like in your early 20s at this point.
I was 20. Yeah.
20. Got it.
And
so you had done the 8 houses by the time you were 20.
Yeah.
All right. Give me the number. How much did you make on that first house?
Well, the first house, it was not the best deal. Like I paid about market price for it. And then I put, $15,000 into it. And I was probably into it more than it worked out fine because I was able to rent the bedrooms, to my buddies in college. But then I kind of was like, then I kind of figured out the whole, I guess back then it wasn't the BRRRR thing, right? It was,
right.
But now Bigger Pockets has coined that term, but that was kind of what I started doing from there. I was like, I can figure this out. I can buy some of these cheaper houses and I can fix them like I fixed this one. And, and then it kind of took off pretty well.
Well, it's funny, Tyler, because I remember like in my first year in, when I added up how much I made and how many hours I worked, I think I was making $1.11 an hour by the time that first year is over. You look back and you go, whew, that was a lot of effort for that.
Oh, I was so dumb when I first started.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I didn't know what I was doing. I was just, I was in college. I was playing college golf. I was doing this stuff all on the side to make extra money. And by the time I was a sophomore, I was managing properties for other people, which in Kansas, it was one of 8 states you didn't have to be licensed to do property management. So it was just kind of luck that I was able to even do that.
And then what was that like as a young kid? I mean, so when you're, people calling up, my toilet's broken, not paying the rent. I mean, what kind of stuff were you up against as a young man that you were like, oh my God, this is crazy?
I would say I was kind of bad at it at first. People probably could have got a better product those first couple of years from somebody who knew what they were doing. But I also started in a small market where there wasn't much competition. So when people realize there's somebody even willing to do it, right. I started getting a lot of business,
Right. Because nobody else wanted it.
Yeah. And I was, I had 160 doors by the time I was 23. And I was, I personally had 48 doors by that time, but I was managing 160 in total. And it was just me, and I was outsourcing all the handyman work. I was even doing some of the handyman work myself at that time that I could do. Um, and it just kept kind of grow. And then I finally hired somebody then because I'd also got my real estate license right before I graduated college in 2010 and went to work for an older broker who I'd known for a long time. And the reason I did that was because I thought, well, it'll create more deal flow for me and my clients to buy and grow our property management portfolio, right? And which at that time was pretty true because there was a lot of foreclosures. So it was like, there actually was a lot of deal flow coming through the MLS. Now that's not so true anymore. Paying market price right now is not really an option for an investor most of the time. I got my real estate license, and the first year I sold nothing. Like I made
Right.
$12,000 in
Right.
commissions, I think, and then the next couple of years it kind of kept creeping up. And in a small town, Pittsburgh, Kansas, where at that time the average sale price was $80,000, I
Right.
sold like $4.5 million worth of real estate the same year. I was managing 160 properties myself, and plus buying and fixing up properties myself. And it got crazy, and I had to try. And I finally hired somebody. Right, I finally hired a assistant. She was a disaster. She made it worse. This first person I hired. Um, and then I got rid of her and begged my now wife, then girlfriend, who was a HR director and safety director at a pet food manufacturing facility at the time, to come help me. And so I said, I can pay you what you're making at your current job. I'm already paying this girl who's screwing shit up for me,
Right.
to the same. So then she did. And she really did a good job of like putting systems and processes and SOPs and hiring practices and, building a team out and all these things that I was just like, oh, I'm just running around trying to figure it out. And from there, we were able to scale that business in a tiny little 20,000 person town to 550 doors under management um, by 2015.
So 5 years. So 2010, you've got this other woman that's kind of is making it worse. You somehow convince your then girlfriend
Well,
that
that
this
was actually 2011 when I hired the first girl,
okay,
and in 2012 was when my wife came in. And
got it. So in 3 years, she really pulled it together, put the systems in place. And that was probably your best sales job, convincing her that property management was the way to go in terms of her career.
yeah, yeah. And then at some point, I was good at the like helping people with the investment side. I was good at analyzing the deals and the numbers and figuring out what construction costs would be and, you know, basically putting the deals together and selling them. Right. I just wasn't the most natural at the management side of it, you
Well, I
know?
tell you what, Tyler, it's really interesting because I do want to go back. Let me ask this question before I forget. Most people don't, as a little kid, aren't like, I want to be a property manager or I want to be in real estate, right? But what I find is the people who are good at it and successful at it, there was something about you as a kid that you were like good at or interested in that later on you're utilizing. So, like as a kid, what skills and talents or interests did you have as a kid that you really think are coming into play with what you're doing now?
I was just very entrepreneurial in general. I mean, I was the cliche lemonade stand kid,
Mhm.
and then when I was 9 years old, I recruited a couple of my buddies at the country club so my dad ran the country club. So my dad was the general manager and golf pro at the country club in the small town I grew up in. I recruited a couple of my buddies and we built nets out of fishing nets and golf clubs. And we went and went out as far as we could in the ponds and scraped the bottom of the ponds for golf club or golf balls, and then then we picked through them and sold the good ones back to the local golf shops, for 25 cents a piece. So, and then when I was still in high school, I was 16 years old. I started a J&T home improvement with a friend of mine who had already graduated. And so he could work it daily, and I would come kind of after school, after golf practice, and do what I could in the evenings, weekends. And we were doing simple stuff. We were power washing, we were painting, we were hanging Christmas lights for people, just very basic kind of home improvement work.
But Tyler, let me ask you this. So, entrepreneurial folks, right? Some people just love to solve problems. Creatively, it's interesting to see a market, see a problem, put it all together, figure out how to do it. Other people are motivated by money, right? They just love the idea of the freedom of financial independence and like being in that realm. So like operationally, like what about it as a kid even did you find exciting?
Yeah, I would say it was more, the housing thing it's twofold. E- When I was in junior high and high school, I was spending some time. I'd worked a little bit part-time for a contractor. I'd worked, a little bit for my dad at the country club, just kind of part-time stuff. Um, and when I was 14, 15, I started going down for at least, 2 weeks at a time, maybe a month through the summer, and staying with my grandparents in Tulsa, which was a couple hours away from where I was living. And my grandpa had had a very successful career. He basically ran a company that sold aeronautic parts, right? He had worked his way up from being an engineer and then a salesperson to being the president of this company that sold aeronautic parts in Tulsa. And he was like almost 60 years old in 2001. He was 58 or 59 years old in 2001, when I was in eighth grade. And he had all of his retirement, he'd been being very frugal and had all of his, he had a couple $1,000,000 in retirement in the stock market, all in the stock market in 2001. It went down by half, and he was like ready to retire. He was right there at the end. And so he decided the way that I can still retire or semi-retire is I can sell all these stocks, which probably dumb when it's down by half in hindsight, right? But he sold all those stocks and he bought 15 rental houses in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And so I started going down and kind of helping him he would kind of show me some basic, like sanded and stained hardwood floors in one of his, when the unit turned and painted it. I'd learned how to replace the wax ring on a toilet. I learned how to set a toilet. I learned how to hang trim. I learned how to do kind of some very basic remodel work, finish work type stuff on houses from the time I was 14 till I was 16. And I thought that qualified me to go start a home improvement company. And,
Right.
and so, and he was also, good about, he was a smoker. Well, I mean, he's actually still alive. He's 87 years old.
One of those guys that they say, right, smoking and he's 87 and you're going, all right, the hell,
Yeah.
40-year-olds who are running every day are having high cholesterol, and here he is
Well, he was
smoking.
until like 5 years ago. He was actually in pretty dang good health still. He's kind of now getting some emphysema and some,
Right, sure.
breathing problems, right? But he's still he's still getting around. I still go down and visit a few times a year and go to lunch or dinner or whatever. And, he's still
Kicking it.
kicking, but he's not playing golf and stuff. Up until 5 years ago, I mean, he was still playing golf 3 or 4 times a week and, managing his own rental properties and, all this stuff. So he was still pretty active.
So that was an influence. I mean, you kind of saw what he was doing and then you got into it and you're like, oh, this looks kind of cool. And, there was a book recently called Fluke, Fluke, which just talked about the nature of how one little change in your life. I mean, wherever you met your wife, right? If you don't go to that place that day or she's not in that class or wherever it was. And the fact that your grandfather lost all that money. And if he hadn't lost all that money, he wouldn't have bought those houses. If he didn't buy those houses, maybe you're not interested in it or seeing that as a possibility.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, he was really good. The reason I mentioned that he was a smoker was because he set his office up in his garage intentionally so that he could smoke in his office, right? And he had a TV set up out there and he had
The man cave. He had his man cave going on.
Yeah, so he would, and he had like a little putting mat and his golf clubs and all this stuff out
He
there,
had it
right?
going on, man.
And, at night we would oftentimes order pizza. So we'd go to work at 6 or 7 in the morning on one of his houses, and then we'd go play golf with his buddies at noon or 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And then we'd go back to the house and we'd order pizza, and he'd work on the books on his rental properties. And he'd kind of show me, the back end of QuickBooks, how the money was flowing and the expenses and, some of that stuff. So I just, I'm like, he owned them all outright, right? I mean, he had sold all these stocks to buy them, and that was his income for retirement. And it was pretty good. I mean, 15 rental houses, even back then, he was maybe bringing in 12 or 13,000 a month gross. And, he's probably netting 10-ish, depending on the month.
Right.
And I thought, this looks pretty good, for a guy whose dad was a golf pro at a small town country club, probably making 50 or 60K a year, and a mom who was a teacher and a social worker.
Yep.
He
And
was,
out where you guys are living, man, you're living large, right? I mean, you can live your life. You got your bills paid. Go out to dinner. You go golfing.
yeah, 10,000 a month's pretty good, pretty good in rural Kansas, in rural Oklahoma. That's really why I went back when I was 18 years old, or that's why I started the home improvement business. That's why because I could do the things that we were advertising to do, right? Like very basic home improvement work. And Jason, my friend who I started J&T Home Improvement with at the time when I was 16 years old, he had been working for a contractor part-time as well prior to this. So like we both had marginal skills, I would say. And yeah, I mean, I don't know that I would be doing what I'm doing now if it wasn't for all that experience, but so I came back, bought a house, didn't know. And one thing he did not teach me was like how to understand the deal, right? Like whether it was a smart investment or not.
He didn't understand that.
I didn't understand that.
Okay. Got it.
I had to kind of learn that through making mistakes the first couple deals and figuring it out. And then it got going pretty good after that.
Well, here's the interesting piece for me, Tyler, right? And actually, it's interesting that I had someone on yesterday, and I love the way that they put this. They called it drift. So, and what he meant by that is you're a creative guy, right? So you're putting these pieces together and hey, I'm going to do the home improvement thing, but I don't really know that much, but now the property management. So your brain is looking at deals, looking at creatively how to do it. And then what I heard was the systems weren't in place to support that creativity. You tried to hire a woman and she didn't really bring anything. Then you bring your wife on, and I heard you mention SOP, standard operating procedure, hiring people, and bringing some structure to it.
Yeah.
And without that structure, we can't grow because there's too many things falling through the cracks. There's too many agreements that aren't being kept. There's too many balls in the air, and the structure of it starts to fall apart.
Yeah.
Machines are really good at 1 + 1 = 2, right? And so I'm just curious. And what's your wife's name?
Renee.
So I'm just curious with Renee. Has she started playing around with, okay, here's the series of tasks that our organization has to do every day, every week, every month. What parts of these tasks could I give to an AI agent, a program? Like, has she started down that road?
To be honest, not so much on her side. I've been doing more of that. I mean, she's still managing the team a lot day to day.
Right.
And now we have 5 locations and 2,100 units under management and 15 real estate agents and an in-house construction arm. Like we're doing build to rent developments, across those 5 markets. We're 2 of the offices are actually franchises. So we got registered to sell franchises. And then we built our own software system, Live Apex, which is, a property management system that would be competitive with an Appfolio or a Door Loop or Yardi or one of those, right?
Have you heard about iLease? Yeah. Someone in the property management space in New York mentioned that recently, just in terms of coordinating, like when leases are up and when service orders come in and who's getting out to fix it. And if that guy's not available, who's available? And then the follow-up and all of that kind of stuff, which used to all be somebody sitting in the office, right, on the phone saying, "Hey, the toilet's broken in C. Is Joe available to go out and fix it?" Right? I mean, that's the way it was done.
Yeah.
And then so how did you started looking at all of these processes and like what's your process to identify A, what's going on with AI? What's going on with your systems? Like what can it do? What can't it do? Like how do you do that?
Well, I read a lot. I spend almost an hour every morning over coffee just reading. I've got different business, technology, news stuff that I have categorized in my email that I specifically sign up for these newsletters or news services. And I go through and read half a dozen of those every single morning. I read books as well, but probably between audio. So I probably read about 10 to 12 hard, physical books a year. And I've always done that. I've always read a lot. And then I listen to probably another 50, right? I mean, I bet I go through an audiobook a week while I'm hitting golf balls, while I'm working out, while I'm driving in the car, that it's always on. And I would say you just hear about that way, and then also when I'm sitting in my office set up, I've a lot of times got an MSNBC or a Bloomberg or something like that in the background, even though I'm not working, I'll sometimes pick something up that way as well. So I would say then I hear about something and I go investigate it really and test it. And so because we have the software now, we also have a CTO in house. We have 2 engineers that work for us in house. And so if I have an idea, I have somebody kind of technical who can help
Got
me
it.
implement the idea. It's not necessarily me having to figure it out, but we've got a conversational AI that answers the phone on leasing and maintenance calls 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Voice agent.
Yeah, and can like process very basic maintenance requests, instantly responds and follows up with leasing inquiries, can send, like somebody says, this is what I'm looking for. It'll send a link to the listings that we have that are like what they say they're looking for. Right. And it'll push them the application link. It'll push them a self-showing link. It'll push them to, it'll ask the question, are you ready to enter into a lease agreement, after there's been a showing. So it doesn't completely close the loop, right? But it gets people down the path a little further to where then the human can step in and kind of close the deal, right?
Yeah, and I think that's the interesting thing that I'm seeing, right? So there's a couple of, and this is the truth for me. The only purpose of AI is to let you do more of what you love and less of what you don't. Because if you're doing what you love, you don't feel like you're working. I mean, like what parts of your job, Tyler, do you still love that even if AI could do it, you wouldn't want it to do it?
I like helping investors build their portfolios.
Mm-hmm.
I like helping map out a plan to help other people accomplish their financial goals through real estate. I like negotiating and closing deals. I would say more probably the human side of it, and I like thinking about the future and where this business could go and how we can fix some of the problems inherent in the property management business. Um,
And what do you think those problems are right now that aren't fixed yet? You know what I mean? Like looking into the future, what's one or two the biggest problems you see in property management right now that haven't been fixed?
Well, I'm actually writing a book about this right now, and there's a ton. I mean, first of all, this is an industry that really has not been that innovated since like at least the 1990s, but in some respects for like 1,000 years, right? I mean, landlords have been doing things the same way for 1,000 years, and there's a million problems there. I mean, look at just the general attitude of tenants to landlords and landlords to tenants and vice versa, right? That feeling in that relationship and that friction that exists between really a business owner and their customer, right? And that's not the way a business is supposed to be. A business is supposed to be like delighting their customers,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so I think everything we can do that sort of reduces the friction and makes renting a home easier, makes paying your bills easier, makes getting a work order process easier, faster, I think. And then you look at even the other side of it, which is, as a property management company, you have clients who are the owners of the properties as well. And you're kind of in between the two. And the general view of property managers in the real estate investor world is pretty dim, right?
And
Like,
why is that?
because the industry average is so poor. I
Hmm.
mean, so there's so many realtors who are starting First of all, a real estate license doesn't really qualify you to be a property manager. Like, nothing in it teaches you how to do it. Nothing in it gives you the skills to be able to understand how to efficiently do maintenance and upkeep on homes to actually maintain the value of the assets that your clients have. It doesn't teach you really about how to even evaluate an investment property. But so many agents think, oh, I'm just going to pick this up on the side as a side gig and do it. And they do it extremely poorly, right? And they charge a lot for it relative to their ability level and the value that they're capable of delivering. So, I mean, poor occupancy, poor leasing practices, poor systems, poor technology,
Hmm.
no standardization across the industry of all these things that should be required. Right, slow turn times, slow leasing, high days on market, maintaining under market rents because it's easier than creating vacancy sometimes. Right, there's a long list, and it mostly centers around the way the incentive structure is in the industry, the lack of centralization and standardization in the industry, and just in general that how easy it is to really become
Yeah,
a
you know what?
property.
It's interesting because obviously I was in the rental space in Manhattan for 20 years, and it always dealing with a lot of landlords, property management, et cetera. And it was always interesting to me the landlords that invested in their property, so that when people moved in, it was nice and clean and relatively new or relatively updated. Those apartments always came back pretty nice. And the landlords who didn't invest in it, this sort of psychology is, hey, I don't really care about you. So you don't really care about me. So I'm going to do the minimum I can do to sort of charge you as much as I can and then be pissed off at you if you leave the place sort of a mess or you're not really telling me what's going on or you're late with your rent. And the way that I saw it, it really, and as I hear you speaking, Tyler, it's like if the renter feels like the owner actually cares about their property, cares about the experience they're having, is doing their best effort to fix stuff if it goes wrong. That creates a relationship. And listen, there's always going to be your 2 or 3% of people who are psychos and whatever. They're not going to play that respect game. But for the most part, what I find is if you treat people right, they want to treat you right. Is that
90,
true?
95+% of the time, that's true. Yes. I mean, I would say the vast majority of our tenants are good people just trying to do the right thing, trying to pay their bills, trying to take care of their family, right? And some of our tenants have a lot of money. Some of them don't have very much money, right? And there's a big variety. But it's absolutely true in this business that the product that you deliver and the service that you provide will absolutely be the end result that you achieve on the investment. Right. And I think a lot of people just think, oh, I can just buy real estate and I can hold it forever and I can manage it however, and I'm going to be rich, which definitely not true. This is a business that requires savvy acquisition, deal structuring, high level operations and management on a day to day basis to be really successful with this.
Well, Tyler, listen, my family had restaurants when I was a kid, and I think it's the same thing. Anybody thinks, hey, I could just go open a place and, open the doors and I'm just going to get rich because I saw a TV show about, restaurants that make all this money. And then the reality is, food cost and presentation and keeping the place clean and choosing which menu items to put on at which time of the year based on what's fresh and understanding that people want to walk in and feel concerned, want to feel cared for. And you can't just open the door and serve cold bread and flat soda and think everybody's going to keep coming back or treat your place right, or that your employees are going to want to work there. Is that
And
a good
AI,
analogy?
those are a lot of things we were talking about right there that are very human things that I'm not sure AI will ever be able to do, right? Will AI ever really be able to listen to another human being about their goals and their plans and their dreams
Absolutely not.
and care about it enough to like be a partner in that and help them through that process? Will AI ever really be able to handle the human element of like tenant issues, some of the tenant, landlord relationship stuff that we're talking about here? Or will humans even want that? Like, let's say that they can, but they know it's a machine that they're talking to. Would they prefer somebody who's a human being with empathy
Well,
and
here's what I'll tell you.
knowledge?
That I had an experience recently, Tyler, and I think that's a really interesting question. But I used to hate chatbots, right? You'd go on a website and you start talking, you go, oh God, they're going to send me to the FAQ, and then I got to press here and press. It's like a nightmare. Well, I was on Stripe recently trying to figure out how to set up my account, and here it comes, the voice agent, and I'm like, I'm rolling my eyes, but it actually solved my problem.
Yeah.
And I thought in that context, I really would rather talk to a bot because I don't want a relationship with the customer service person. I don't want to go through the whole spiel of thank you for being a customer. I don't want to go through the whole spiel of at the end of this, can you do a survey? I don't want to go through any of that.
It depends, right? But there are
Right.
certain
But right. What I'm saying, so there are things where agents, I
more
would
efficient.
rather deal with a voice agent because this is not a relationship. This is a transaction. I just want to figure out how to send out this link.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I want to do it in the shortest amount of time possible without, anything going on. So to your point, and this is where I think where you've done really well, Tyler, and this is where it gets interesting. I kind of look at it like the black, the white, and the gray. The black is what AI can and should do all the time. Send me a text, 24 hours, you got a doctor's appointment tomorrow at 1, please press 1 to confirm. AI can do that all day long, saves the doctor time, saves him money, saves me aggravation. I don't have to talk to someone, I get reminded.
Even a lot of that stuff isn't really AI that's required. A lot of it's
Right, exactly.
just
But
writing a basic line of code that says, if this happens, then that happens.
right.
A lot of those things,
It's just automated intelligence. It's
yeah,
here's 100 tasks that have to happen for Gus. When I'm with the doctor, I obviously want to talk to him. I don't want an AI telling me what my blood results are. But what I'm seeing, and I'm interested in your process in your company, that every job is a series of tasks. Every workflow is a series of tasks. So if you took any job description, property manager, whatever the roles are, AI can do a certain amount of those tasks today and will be able to do more of them tomorrow. And after that, it could do this, but you still need a human in the loop. So what's your process for kind of identifying, hey, what can AI do right now? What is it going to be able to do 6 months from now? And what can it do that we should keep a human in the loop? And what should it never do? Like, what's your process thinking that through?
I mean, I'll tell you, our goal with Live Apex is to get it, and there is an AI component to it, right? There is the voice AI leasing and maintenance agent component. There is the, a collections agent component. There is some things to it, but our goal is really to automate 50 to 60% of the entire process of running a property management business and really be able to do it more remotely from a centralized location and ultimately, hopefully drive the required price of delivering the service down. Right? Decrease operating expense ratios for investors across the country. Hopefully. I mean, that's what we're trying to do. And still deliver a more seamless and frictionless service for all the residents that we have across the thousands of properties that we currently manage and the millions we hope to manage in the future.
I just had an ugly image, Tyler. The first robot they create, you'll make that your collections guy.
See, I don't.
The Terminator showing up at your door going, let's go, rent, please.
There are just certain sensitive conversations where I don't think people are going to want to speak to a robot or an AI, right?
I agree.
mean, there's certain, I always think our team is going to be so I think people, process, technology in that order is what's important. And, I would say that it's like you mentioned the doctor, like if you had blood work and it was bad and you're going to get some kind of a bad diagnosis, do you want a robot just coming in and telling you
Right.
these are the
No.
numbers, like you have stage 4 cancer, good luck. I don't think you want that. I don't
Right.
think people want that. I don't think people want when they're having a sensitive, like, maybe an addiction conversation, something like that. I don't think they want that when they're having some sort of a serious problem with their home, like, God forbid there's a mold issue or a foundation issue or something, serious with the home that they're living in. I don't think they want a robot giving them a diagnosis, and they want a human being with some empathy and some bedside manner, right? So I think, and same thing with clients. Like, I don't think property management clients are ever not going to want somebody who's a human being in the market that they are investing in, that understands it and can work and speak with them on nuanced things, right? I think maybe at some point for 90% of the process that'll be it, right? But you're still going to need some high level human beings who can think and process and problem solve and do the human interaction piece of it.
Yeah, and this is what I find, Tyler. Listen, so how long you been at this game now? 20 years, or how long you
Pretty
been?
close.
Okay.
So 2008 to now 18 years.
Right. So basically you got almost 20 years. So you understand the nuances, and this is what I see over and over and over again. Really, the sweet spot is guys like you and like me who have 20, 30 years in an industry, who deeply understand the nuances and understand the processes, where the pain points are, where the friction points are, where AI might be able to come in and say, hey, listen, we could smooth out this thing here, but not this thing. But the question I then have for you is, how do you get buy-in from your employees, right? How do you get buy-in, like, hey, either fear that the thing is going to take their job away. You know what I mean? Like, talk to me a little bit about the human element of AI adoption in your organization.
Yeah, I mean, I've got 40 people who work with me now on my team, and that's not including the real estate agents and all the vendors and all the other, outside
Right.
people. And first of all, I would say I only want the best people that we can get in the markets that we're in. Like, I want to hire very smart, high level people. Like, I don't think we have a single person who, after bonuses and stuff, will make under $50,000 a year working for us. And some of our managers of our locations could potentially make a couple $100,000 a year, which in our areas is a lot of money,
Yeah.
right? And maybe in New York City or, LA, that's not a lot of money, but, in Joplin, Missouri and Springfield, Missouri and Northwest Arkansas, that's a lot of money. So I think when you're recruiting that level of talent, when you're recruiting the top end people, they understand, like, hey, I'm good enough, I'm valuable enough, and making my job easier so we can do more, and we can all make more money, and probably their wages can go up, right? Like, as time goes along and it's costing less to deliver the services, there's more of a spread there to go around to everyone. You can share it back with your clients a little bit eventually. You can share it back with your team a little bit eventually. And I think, when you have it helps when you're an organization like ours that has an extremely large vision for the future, and is truly working to revolutionize the way housing's delivered in the country, not just like, you know, there's a lot of property management companies who, yeah, they might manage 500 doors in their market, but their only real goal of the owner is to suck as much money out of that business as they possibly can personally, right? And I don't think people really want to work for that kind of an organization. I think people want to work for a company that not that it's going to be their sole purpose in life, like maybe it is mine, but that it's going to be a piece of their purpose in their life, right? Like, maybe it's family, maybe it's faith, and then career, or whatever it is, whatever their thing is. And so I think finding a way as a business, as an organization, to show people a path where their work that they're doing can be a part of their purpose in their life,
Mm-hmm.
and can give them meaning and can give them a reason to get up in the morning. It makes those things easy, right? I mean,
Well, absolutely. Look, I loved, and I heard once, it was in the E-Myth Revisited, a book by Gerber, which I'm sure you've read, and he talks about People who are happy in work have autonomy, mastery, and purpose. And autonomy means even if it's, hey, within my little realm, like this is my little fiefdom over here. Like this is, I can operate within this structure, within this company. I get to make decisions based on my experience, and I can, there's a purpose to this. I'm with an organization that's trying to give people housing that's decent and return money to investors that's fair. And, my purpose is I want to work with people that are, and I find this to be true, Tyler. Human beings are fundamentally a cooperative species. Like, if you think about it, the food is on the table, the grocery store, the truck driver said he would show up. He did. The farmer said he would do that. He did. You said you would turn on the heat. You did. Like, fundamentally, we're all cooperating for the most of our day.
And it's all
Most people,
voluntary, which is
right?
unless you're dealing with a regulator of some sort, it's all voluntary cooperation, which I find to be a very beautiful thing. And I think it's the
And we're
reason
wired that way. I mean,
and I think it's the reason the world's got to the point where it's got to now, and why our lives are so much easier than they were 200 years ago,
yes.
is because people work together really to their own benefit, right? It's like, all the things that I'm talking about, I'm speaking about them in what's probably a very altruistic, sense, right? But if we actually accomplish all those things, there's a lot of benefit in it for me and for everybody on my team
Right.
and for all the people who are working with us, right? And I'm not so sure if that wasn't the case, that people would put in the time and energy required to do it. Like if what I was working on, there was no additional benefit in it for me at the end of the day, other than maybe the satisfaction of a job well done. Would I work 70 hours a week to try to figure it out? Would I take every opportunity that there was? Probably less, right? Most people would probably work less hard if there was no incentive to continue working.
I don't know. I think I think if you love what you do, then it doesn't quote unquote feel like work. And I don't know what your motivations are, but where I'm at in my life right now, I'm working and I love it. A guy talked to recently, he framed it. He says, we're not retired, we're rewired. And, I think I think you probably saw it with your grandpops, working and being of value to people and being of service and doing the things that you kind of love. That's a part of life. Yeah, playing golf is great, but how many guys, I'm sure you saw, Tyler, who thought the whole goal in life was to be able to play golf every day, and after about a year of that, they went, wow, man, this is not what it's all cracked up to be.
Yeah, well, I personally know that I would be bored with it because I tried it. I mean, from 2016 to 2019, I was basically like semi-retired. Excuse me. Sorry, my wife's on the phone with somebody in the other room. I figured
That's
you'd
right.
probably hear that.
Well, that's all right. Listen, my mother's walked in on the podcast a couple of times, so that's always a fun. Hey, Ma, I'm on a podcast.
Well, my dog actually opened the door and walked in here and
Oh, okay. There you go.
yeah, that's why the door was open in the first place.
Fantastic.
But, I
We were talking about you retired for 3 years, 16, or kind of, when you were like, okay.
I would say I was semi-retired for 3
Right.
years, from 2016 to 2019. And I found that if my purpose wasn't growing and building a business, I was going to find something else to do. So like, I thought, I'll practice golf really hard and I'll see if I can get really good at golf, and I'll even go play in a couple of professional tournaments and see how I do. Right. And I got better for sure. And, working on it for a couple of years. And I mean, I even shot under par once in a professional tournament,
There you go.
never really competed at any level, but I got better, got back to actually being better than I ever was before when I played in college and stuff. I played Division II, so I was never like amazing,
Right.
but
you realize, okay, great. So now I broke par. Wow. Now what?
and I was honestly bored with it.
Yeah.
I was bored, like me trying to sit there and like hit golf balls for more than about an hour at a time. Boring. Trying to sit on a putting green for more than about 30 minutes or an hour at a time. Boring. Right. I mean, it's like, okay, I figured it. I mean, I'm hitting every shot the way I want to. I'm making the putts. Like, what's the point? But then what the great ones at golf do, they're actually obsessed with that. And they would like stay there for an extra hour to make sure they can't possibly screw it up or miss it.
Right.
Right. Whereas I'm like, I'm done with this already.
Yeah,
You
and
know,
this, what you're doing now, building systems, trying to figure out how to do it, how to scale it, how to give people meaning and purpose, how to make this a better experience, how to talk to guys about deals and how it could be done, that fires you up. I mean,
for
you're into
me,
it.
this is what I'm doing is infinitely interesting, right? Building a business, trying to scale a company to be a nationwide brand in property management, trying to get to manage 1 million homes. That is infinitely interesting, right?
Love it.
And I mean, during that time, I was so bored with everything. And with golf, I even went and got my private pilot certificate. I learned to fly airplanes, and like I just did sort of meaningless things, right? And then I was bored with that too. And it also wasn't very useful unless I wanted to put a lot more time into it to get to where I could like fly a jet to get me across the country in 2 hours, right? It just wasn't like flying a little Cessna 150 or a Piper Warrior just isn't very useful. So and then late 2019, I said, you know what? We did a pretty good job building this little business in Pittsburgh, Kansas. It makes us good money and we've got a nice life and all this stuff. But let's go see if we can do it again. So we basically took the model, set it down in Joplin, Missouri, which is about 30 miles east of where we started. Rented a small office, hired a team, exactly what we had. Went from 0 to 400 doors in 2 years. And then acquired a competitor that had 200 properties as well. So we went from 0 to 630 doors in that market in less than 3 years. And we're like, well, we have a sales and marketing system that works. We have an operations system that works. Let's get registered to sell franchises and teach other people how to do this. So we did that, and we've sold and opened a couple franchises, and then we launched a third corporate location. We're in the process of launching a fourth corporate location, and we keep just, and now it's like it's an infinite challenge. It's an everyday thing, and the more we do, the harder it gets, right? And you get bigger, and some systems break that you got to refigure out again, and it's not like golf where it gets old. And maybe for other people, what I'm doing, they would hate what I'm doing.
Yeah, but you love it, Tyler. I could tell you love it sitting there, man. We're going to end now just because I got to bounce, but I just wanted to say thank you so much. I love this conversation. I feel like I could talk to you for another couple hours. I may actually reach out after the podcast because a couple of ideas popped into my mind. I want to run them by you, and just want to thank you for being on the show. And how do people get in touch with you? Tell them your company, how they get in touch with you, and what you do.
So we're ProX Property Management. And if you're looking for third-party property management in a city that we are in, so that's another thing. We don't go try to do stuff just wherever. We're in Pittsburgh, Kansas metro area, which is a great little Division II college town that is a great investment market. We're in Joplin, Missouri, which is a great, like, affordable housing investment market. But we're in Bentonville, Fayetteville, Arkansas, which is a college town, Fayetteville, but also a booming market. 36 people a day are moving in there. There's 650,000 people in the metro now, and projected to be 1 million by 2045 because of Walmart, JB Hunt, Tyson all being headquartered there. So that's possibly a huge appreciation play. Springfield, Missouri, another great affordable housing market. You can buy cash flow in most of our markets, which is interesting compared to a lot of the if you're interested in build to rent projects, that's something else we can help with in those areas. So, Winter Haven, Lakeland, Florida, and Ocala, Gainesville, Florida are our other 2 markets. So if you're in one of those 6 markets looking for third-party management and wanting to do some build to rent development, www.proxproperty.com. We also have a real estate investment fund called Iron Harbor Real Asset Fund. If you want to be a totally passive real estate investor and make 14 to 16% returns with some nice cash flow as you go along, that's an option for you. And if you're a property management company out there that's looking to scale and looking to understand how to really build a great business and make more money than you ever thought of before and add way more value to your clients than you currently are, then maybe a franchise conversation would make sense. So
Sounds great, Tyler, man. Really, I appreciate you coming on to the show. And I just want to say to our listeners and viewers, thank you so much for watching Real Estate Rewired, AI with a Heart. And remember, the only purpose to utilize AI is to do more of what you love and less of what you don't. Thanks for watching. If you've got value from today's episode, hit subscribe, leave a comment. I'd love to know what you're thinking. If you're ready to turn what you love into your superpower and take what you hate off your plate, schedule your free AI discovery call. The link is in the description and pinned comment. I'm Gus Waite. Until next time.